Belgrade. Here with us is Grandmaster Suat Atalik, who will comment for us every day. Interesting games from previous round as well as the ongoing round. So now you can start with your analysis.
Okay, so from yesterday's games, the most important one, the really good result by Romanian international master Sandu Mihaela, who has beaten with black pieces one of the favorites, Nana Dzagnidze. And things happened so fast and in such a better way for black that we really have to go over this game to understand where the mistakes were. D4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. So black is ready for the king's Indian, and white plays the main line, king's Indian. Here obviously there are many moves, but the most common move is the line chosen by Sandu Mihaela, knight c6. Okay, so this is the beginning of Etabia, and things are very important for us here, especially in Belgrade. This is called Mar del Plata, due to the efforts of Grigoric, who has beaten both Najdorf and Eliskazes with black pieces in Mar del Plata 1953. At that time, knight e1, knight d7, there is this move, knight d3 obviously, which is another line, but at that time, bishop e3, in the year of 1952, was considered to be a very important line, sort of direct refutation of this system of King's Indian, due to Taimanov's wins. But Grigoric analyzed this position and found a lot of attractive ideas for black. And some of them even was followed in this game. Here we may see the difference between having the knight on d7 and knight on e8. Knight d7 prevents c5 for a move. That's why knight d7 is more preferred compared to knight e8. And white has also attacking chances on the queen side, and black has chances in the king side. And this is the first important junction in the game that many people here, they choose a4, and if black allows, white pushes his pawn to a5 and already has some advantage. And Kasparov probably was one of the first ones to close this side with a4, a5. And a4 was considered to be the main move. Another idea was by Zdenko Kozul to play rook c1, and after knight g6 to give this pawn. And now the black knight cannot go to d7 due to knight b5, has to go to a6. White has lost a pawn, but on the other hand, threw the knight to a6 and made the kingside attack going slower, because sometimes black needs also this knight to deliver blows in the kingside. Here, the first interesting choice by Grandmaster Dzagnidze to play knight e1, d3. This was considered for many years like a risky choice, because this knight also helps the defense of the king side. However, after some time, theory developed in such a way, these days you can take a variation, you can think, you can take a variation and make a lot of things happen. Some people, like Shirov, they continued with knight d3, which was considered to be a mistake from 1953 Mar del Plata wins of Grigorich against both Naidov and Eliskazes. So after knight d3, one way or another, she played knight f6, c5, knight g6. The knight completed the job on d7 to prevent c5 for some time, lured the knight to d3. And rook c1, important choice, that now white really wants to take on d6 and then bring his own knight to b5. Black protects the important point of entry f7, and this is the first important position for the theory of the line. Usually in some latest games, white has chosen a4 in order to make a5 happen on the next move. And a5 is very important, we will see later in the game, for a start of queenside attack. But after a4, there is always this important change in the position. Black can play bishop f8. After c takes d6, black can also take with the bishop on d6, getting rid of the worst piece on g7. I think Dzagnidze, who is a very talented player, having a less academical approach to the game, was worried about this one, and she really played this opening for the first round, and she made a quick decision, CD, CD, quick not by the time, but by the events. And all of a sudden, now she thought like she cannot realize this a4 and a5. But probably still it was the best choice to go a5, even to give this pawn and to put black under pressure on the queen side. Her move is unfortunately very dangerous. She played knight b5. Now this is always a problem in this type of setup for white, because all of a sudden e4 is unprotected. Since e4 is unprotected, black doesn't need to lose time with h5 to accomplish g4, and she pushed it in one move. Under the circumstances, still f takes g4 and knight takes e4 was probably better than the game continuation. But black will deploy this knight to g5 and will try to push e4, and simply she will be better. She played king h1 and came the thematic g3. This is really known to be a bad position for white, because all of a sudden black has a very dangerous queenside attack. It's quite clear to see g4, knight g3 almost ends up the game, because queen comes to h4. She protected, came f takes g3. And maybe one move before queen e1, gf4 is an idea in order to bail out with something like this. But on the other hand, after e takes f4, the situation in the king side continues. And knight g3 is always in the air, and let's not forget the bishop is open. It's also a very dangerous position. Probably technically, we can even call it a lost position. So she preferred queen e1, and now you will see that things developed very smooth for black. Black is missing a pawn, but on the other hand, has a tremendous bishop. Late Grandmaster Gufeld used to call bishop g7 Gufeld's bishop. With all the tribute to him, he made a lot of work and a lot of good games he has shown to develop King's Indian defense. And indeed, if this bishop participates into the game, especially in such a position with two bishops, the position becomes really lost for white, and this is what happened in the game. Black played a6, knight c3, knight f4. Another idea was maybe bishop h6, but knight f4 is quite convincing. Queen f2, rook f6. Now we see that g pawn cannot walk. Then after rook h6, there is the fork on h3. So it was impossible to cover the king side anymore. That's why, going back to this position, knight f4, ef4 happened. Since the position is a little bit stabilized for the moment, we see that bishop g7 has very big role in the game. Also, white really failed to stop the kingside attack. And we can really say that it's probably already lost for white. And a very good move by the Romanian international master. In some way, you know, the position plays itself. Black simply wants to bring the bishop to h4 and then to g3, which looks like game over. Here we have to talk a little bit about the psychological aspects of the game, because I mean, this is the first round. White is stronger player. She wants to do something, and she really wants to win the game, and she ends up in this kind of position, which is really bad for her. And she calls a bluff. She plays e5 in this position, which even loses the game at once. That bishop h4 would have terminated the game, because, as you see, the queen has problems to hold the diagonal. Now queen takes e5, queen b6 would have finished white off. And if white continues in this way, now black has won also the pawn back, and still the kingside attack continues with bishop g3. Interesting enough, after e5, black has believed white and didn't play bishop h4, which would have a serious impact on the game. But anyway, like we have said, the position is really bad for white. Bishop takes e5, bishop d3. Black didn't see this bishop h4, and the game continued. Queen f6. Little trick, rook c2. There is no bishop d4 because of bishop takes h7. And after king h8, now renewing the threat, white has put her bishop to e4. and somehow hoping that the kingside attack could be stopped. And indeed, a little bit defensive resources White has brought in the game. Now this way, she tries to bail out with king f1, king e2. But things are not that simple. I sort of like Black's move bishop c8, which shows sang-froid. She says, like, I defend all my weaknesses. Anyway, my kingside attack will do the dirty job. But on the other hand, probably she could have played rook h5. Since rook g6 is not possible immediately, now queen h6 or rook h5 comes into consideration. And there is also another problem for White. Sometimes, let's say, after king f1, Black can take on c3, and then bishop b5 check comes. Maybe in this situation, White would have to play a4, cutting the important b5 square, and hoping once again that something will happen and she will survive. But after bishop c8 enough, the game plays itself. Bishop c2, queen g7, queen b4. Probably bishop h3, rook d2. Queen g3 was also winning here. Because as you may see, the king cannot proceed to the other side. That this will be game over. Just one of many simple things. But also the consideration comes into consideration how White tried to get the king out of there, but Black simply played rook h5, knight e4, now bishop h3, rook d2, queen h6, king f1, and bishop takes g2 king. Now the difference is, of course, White will not take this bishop, because once again, rook h1 finishes the game off. White has found at least a haven for the king, for some temporary measures. That king is on e2, but the problem, Black has taken back the pawn, lines are open, somehow this is not the game White has desired. Black, as we have said, continues with the attack. The game plays itself in some way. Comes to the first line and brings bishop f1 in. Once again, it is clear that rook takes f1 loses extremely easy. Simply Black removes the last defender, and as you have seen, all the heavy pieces, heavy artillery, queen c2 and rook g8 came into the White's camp. That's why after bishop f1 check, she had to go to d2 and came bishop b5. Now we see once again that queen g1 threatens to win the game at once. So white made this desperado sacrifice, rook b5, a b5, queen b5, and black removed important pawn the important pawn on b2. Now it's obvious that with the c line open, white's king is in serious danger. Well, here there is not much to do, but white simply continued to struggle, covered important square d4, that queen d4 doesn't win the game immediately. And rook c8. Okay, now it's obvious that with queen g1 coming, the position is resignable for white, and she indeed played a couple of moves. There are many choices for black, but came the final touch, that this one loses immediately, but it's the only way to prevent this queen c1 checkmate, and came queen a5 from the other side, and white had to resign, which was the biggest surprise of the first round. Many people stumbled in the first round, many people, they had some games, but this was the most important game, in my opinion, of the first round. Now, also from yesterday's